Throughout September 2016, I found myself watching a bunch of specials revisiting the JonBenét Ramsey murder case. When it was a huge news story back in the 90s, I was pretty young and didn't really understand the unsettling images of JonBenét on the cover of tabloids. It was like she was a celebrity, but only after her death, which didn't make sense to me at the time. Over the years, I've become interested in true crime, and I've caught up on the details of this case. So now, after having seen all of these new specials and documentaries, I feel like there's a lot to digest and deconstruct. If you feel the same way, keep watching. Let's start by making a clear distinction with these 5 specials. These 2 at the top support the claim that JonBenét was killed by an intruder, while the 3 at the bottom support the claim that she was killed by her family. We're going to look closely at the people, theories, and evidence presented in these specials, but before that, I think we need to establish a little bit of context. Who made these specials? Do they have respectable backgrounds in journalism or documentary filmmaking? Let's find out. So let's start with a closer look at JonBenét, an American murder mystery. This was a partnership between Investigation Discovery and American Media Incorporated, or AMI. And if you're wondering what AMI is, it's the organization that owns the National Enquirer. If that doesn't mean anything to you, then let me just mention that there's a long, ongoing relationship between the Ramsey family and the National Enquirer. I could really do a whole video on that topic alone. So what I'm saying is that this is not an impartial investigation coming at this topic with fresh eyes. These are the same people that have been publishing scandalous tabloid articles about this family since the 90s. The actual production company is called Jupiter Entertainment, and they're just a generic reality TV production company. There isn't much to say. They did their job producing the reenactments, but I doubt they had any influence on the information being presented. Alright, so let's take a look at the next one, the case of JonBenét Ramsey. This one seemed very interesting. In the trailer, it claimed to have new interviews, new witnesses, new evidence, new experiments, and it also seemed to imply that they were going to finally expose the truth.
This little girl's homicide to this date has been unresolved. In my opinion, I think we can change that right now.
We hope to get the truth out about how she died.
So, who made this? It was directed by this guy, Eddie Schmidt. In 2009, he did a series called Psychic Hollywood, The Search for Truth. Search for Truth, that sounds promising. Let's take a look.
Hi, I'm Carla Barron, and I'm a psychic. I've been invited to work on cases like JonBenét Ramsey.
I'm looking for you to tell me whatever you can. Any messages that my brother can give us to find his body.
Ivan, it's man-made. Here's the fork, and it's by the fork, he said. Ivan, look at that thing move. Look, right by the fork, right here. Ivan, were you here? He was here. It's about giving peace to Perla and her family. I heard him so clear. I know he's here in this forest. I know he is. This is the last resting place for this body, right here.
We've been here all day. We haven't found nothing, not even a single animal bone. We've been digging, clawing, and using all of our equipment. I'm very discouraged and frustrated, really.
So that's Eddie Schmidt, but that was a while ago. That was like 7 years ago. Since then, he's been a supervising producer of Storage Wars New York.
Got some heavy lifting to do today, pal. Great. Luckily for Brandon, there's no heavy thinking.
And he was also an executive producer and director for Chelsea Does.
So this is happening. It's like nausea-inducing.
So the forces behind this show definitely seem to be in a reality TV realm. Then there's the Dateline program, Who Killed JonBenét? Dateline is a really well-established storytelling institution. It's won multiple Emmys and Peabodys. It's also the show that introduced us all to Chris Hansen and To Catch a Predator. In my opinion, this is the most credible investigation of these 3, at least from a production standpoint. Then there's Dr. Phil's interviews with Burke Ramsey. This is the first time Burke has spoken to the media since the crime, so it was a highly publicized TV event. It was actually so popular they extended it from 3 to 4 episodes. I'll be doing a deep analysis of the Burke Ramsey interview later, but for now, I'll just say this about Dr. Phil. In my opinion, he asked both Burke and John just about every tough question there was to ask. Whether you believe the answers or not, I think Dr. Phil deserves some credit for being pretty thorough. So let's move on to the killing of JonBenét, The Truth Uncovered. It was directed by a guy named Roger Cork. Prior to this, he had worked mostly on BBC documentary programs like Dispatches and Panorama. He worked on one about the Camorra, an Italian crime syndicate.
These are the lookouts who alert the drug runners at the first sight of the police. And these are the Camorra dealers. The expensive wheels are the giveaway. They rule estates like this where no outsider can venture. I wanted to talk to an insider.
He directed one about air pollution and another one about corruption in the education system.
If my son had been assisted this much, I'd be really worried. Do you think this happens a lot?
Yes, I do. A fellow head teacher rang me, and his exact words were, the only thing you did wrong was you got caught.
So, based on his track record and other research I did, he seems like a pretty credible documentary filmmaker. Okay, so let's recap. We've got award-winning, well-established investigative journalism. Then we've got what appears to be reality TV-style true crime, but the real driving force is actually AMI and the National Enquirer, so I'm going to classify this as tabloid journalism. The case of JonBenét Ramsey seems to come from the world of reality TV. And then there's the interviews with Burke. They adhere to the standard daytime talk show format, and that seems like the right classification here. And finally, we have the Roger Cork documentary. Because John Ramsey was directly involved in this production, some people would argue that this is just propaganda, or like an infomercial trying to sell you on the innocence of the Ramsey family. But I think you could argue the exact same thing for the police involvement in the other 3 productions. So given Roger Cork's background and the way it's constructed, I'm going to classify this as documentary. So I hope this gives us a little bit of an understanding of how the actual production may influence the information that's being given to us. But that's just our starting point. This story is told primarily through the points of view of a large cast of characters. So in the next video, we're going to attempt a reasonable analysis of every single person that appears in these specials.